I'm going to do this very, very quickly because you're not here to listen to me, you're here to listen to a panel of people discussing stuff. So, my name is Donald Taylor. Every year I ask the same question, which is, what will be hot in workplace learning and development in 2020? And it sounds like a really silly question to ask because, you know, what does one person's opinion matter 1 year? But I have over 2,000 people answer this question, and I've been asking it for 7 years. And over the period of time, it's possible to see trends, and the trends tell us quite a lot about what's going on. A couple of caveats. The first thing is I don't know if these people answering this survey are from learning and development. It's a self-selecting group. They could be anybody. However, almost certainly they are from learning and development. Secondly, they're a self-selecting sample. So the people, and I'll come to that in a second, are people who are interested in technology and do it first of all before everyone else adopts it. All that being said, this year was the 7th year of doing it. People choose 1 to 3 options from 15 options. There were over 2,000 people voting from 86 countries. The caveat, as I say, is they're self-selecting. So they are almost certainly all from the innovator and early adopter part of the Everett Rogers technology adoption lifecycle. All right, here are the 15 options plus other that I ask people what will be hot. Inevitably, I'm going to ask you now to turn to the person next to you, and I'd like you to say, and if you have nobody next to you, you have to move along and find a new friend, and I'd like you very quickly talk for 30 seconds to the person next to you. Which of these do you think will be the hot thing this year in 2020? Very quickly. And I don't provide people with any definition of what hot is or not. I just say what will be hot, not what should be hot. All right, lots of conversation going on. You're thinking about it. You're thinking about it. And you've got it. All right, good. So, how can I say this in French, Sally? Qu'est-ce qui est chaud? 2020. You can't say 2020. 2020. Qu'est-ce qui est chaud? 2020. Ouais. Alors, la réponse. Neuroscience, says Sally. Okay, anybody else got any answers? Sally says neuroscience. Yes. Learning in the flow of work, which is not on the list, but I was going to put it on. I didn't. I probably should have done. So, learning on the flow of work. Yes, at the back. I've got to come right down. So Alan wants to have 3 different things: artificial intelligence, neuroscience, yes, and big data. All right, there's a lot in that. That's a good answer. Anybody else from this side? Yes. Say again, sorry? Virtual and augmented reality. All right. Do you want to see what 2,000 people said? Okay, I'm not getting much feedback. Do you want to see what? Yes, we do. Yeah, okay, all right. Okay, voilà. Okay, here's the réponse. Now, if you want more, okay, I've written a little bit up about this. There will be a full, 40-page summary coming out at the end of February. Okay? The numbers in brackets are where we were last year. So I would say let's drill on that if you want more information. That's the key thing. What I want to draw your attention to is what's at the top of the table and what's at the bottom of the table. By the way, there are no right and wrong answers. So if you think virtual reality is important, it might be really important for your organization. I do think you're right. The combination of neuroscience, big data, and analytics is incredibly important. Let's just focus on the top of the table. What's interesting is these things are all the same as they were last year, just moved around. That was number 6 last year. But very importantly, the first one on the list is learning analytics. Now, I haven't defined what learning analytics is. This year, it was number 1. For the past 3 years, personalization has been number 1. For the 2 years before that, personalization was number 2 and collaborative learning was number 1. So this is the first time in 5 years that we've had a new number 1. Second thing, and then I'm going to get everyone up on the table, everyone up and have a conversation about what we think is going to be big this year, all right? So the second thing that is important about this is that there are two distinct groups of people who answer this survey. They don't know it, but the people who respond by social media and the people who respond to an invitation by email respond very differently. The social media people are a bunch of people who talk to each other all the time. They're always interested in the latest ideas. Their ideas are normally 18 months to 24 months ahead of everybody else's ideas. So last year, the social media group put learning analytics at number 1, and the email group put them at number 6. This year, both email and social media put learning analytics at number 1, and there was no question. It was number 1 throughout the survey. And I follow it every day. I see any changes. And that's very unusual. So it's a very, very strong winner. So that tells us, it doesn't mean learning analytics is going to be strong this year. What it tells us is that everyone's taking it really seriously for some reason. And we could talk about other stuff. At the bottom of the table, sorry, neuroscience, it should be more important. It breaks my heart, curation is number 14. I think curation should be much higher. And video back in 2014 was number 3. It has slowly made its way down each year. Sorry, video, this is your last year on the survey. It will come off. It is now business as usual. It's not hot anymore for anybody. Okay, so that's enough with that. We'll go back, and then I'm going to say, Sally, you threw me into this to do this presentation. Thank you for the opportunity, but now should we have the panel which everyone actually came here for? Okay, let's have some Fosway.
My question to you guys, and it includes Fosway, yeah. What's going on then? Why is learning analytics suddenly so hot? In your opinion, what do you think? What does David think? Start with you.
So, I'm going to leap in just for a minute and hijack that, because you've got learning experience platforms moving up from 6 to 4, and we have just said that LMSs, LXPs, and NGLEs do not exist. They're dead. What we now talk about is suites and specialists. So the suite is what traditionally probably was the LMS, maybe with a little bit of next-gen learning environment on there, but also what we've been finding is that the next-gen systems are backfilling with the LMS functionality. So in fact, there is no difference. There is no point in having a differentiator or a classification that says next-gen LMS. It's a suite. But there are specialists, and some of those specialists, I mean, they are amazing, but they're all doing lots of different systems. They're not all LXPs, experience platforms. So I just wanted to have a look at our report, download it. It's free. It's free. Yeah, so yeah.
Where can people find out more?
More on 9 grids, fosway.com, and just download the report to do with the learning systems and see what we're saying about that. So I'll let somebody else answer the question about why is learning analytics. Yeah, David?
Hi, everyone. I think it goes, I would echo back for those of you that might have been in the session earlier today that I did. I think it's bubbling up now because of the combination of proactive and reactive nature of L&D professionals. Don mentioned the difference between the people who do it on social media and such. There's a proactive nature to how can we harness this for our work. And there are lots of different ways in which that's being applied. But there's also the reactive nature to the idea of analytics giving us a better understanding of what's going on in our workplaces and what people are doing, not in an L&D context, in a performance context within the organization, is radically getting faster. And that prevents a certain, that creates a certain level of accountability within the L&D function that people are becoming more and more aware of. So it's not always a case of just putting L&D out there in terms of we need to be doing analytics better, but understanding that the ability to understand what people are doing and therefore how L&D supports it is getting greater within an organization, and our ability to respond to that is becoming more important.
Very good. Dave, does that necessarily mean, I mean, this just says about, this talks about sentiment. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean it's going to be done well. It doesn't mean it's going to be done at all. Do you think that L&D people are ready deliver, understand, and use learning analytics?
Well, I think I also would, learning analytics to me is a little bit narrow, and just in the context that I think that the reason that people are concerned about learning analytics is because they are getting more pressure from analytics within the organization. That the organization in general is having an understanding. There are business leaders who are talking about performance and metrics and analytics associated with how people perform that don't think of it as learning analytics. They're just talking about how the data that's available that help them understand how to perform. So I think that there's a combination of that there's the exterior pressure of the organization is asking questions, data-based questions related to how people are performing and our ability to be able to participate in that conversation, partially through our own analytics, partially being able to talk in the metrics that the business is already using.
So this is like a symptom of the fact that we're hearing this conversation about data going on everywhere. Well, we should be having a data conversation as well.
Agreed.
Can we? Do people in learning and development, Fiona, are you seeing it? Do they have the chops? Can they do it? Sorry, when I say have the chops, that's an American term. I don't mean literally do they have the chops. Do they have the ability to do it?
So I think it's varied, as it would be. But I think what we tend to see is that the data that is being reported on tends to be very internal about bums on seats. Can I say that? Not necessarily about what impact that learning is having on the business, which is absolutely where we need to get to. And maybe in the definition, people are thinking, yes, we do need that. We've got some statistics that from the surveys that we do, that and we ask the question, so how effective are you measuring impact? And the answers to that has been in the teens. It's been so small that people understand they're not doing it well. So I think there is, how do we get that data so we can correlate between what the business, how well they're doing in the business, and how, whether it is actually the learning that is being affecting that. I think we're struggling a little bit. There are certain people there are some case studies, and it's coming, and we need more.
David Guralnick, hello.
Good to see you.
What's your take?
I seem to only see you on stage these days. I see you nowhere else. I think my take is really that it's not entirely about whether L&D people have the chops themselves, but also what's going to be out there to help them see the data better. What's going to be out there to help them do more with the data and more tools that that are going to help people do something useful with it. There's a massive amount of data that we could have, right? I mean, there's just absolutely massive amounts of data. And if we get the right kinds of reports, the right kinds of ways to think about it, the right connections between what the analytics are saying and what you can actually do with that to not only measure performance but see how you can improve it. There's some of that I think comes from elsewhere, comes from what are people building that are going to help you. And I think that's not all on L&D to do custom, but some of that's going to come from the outside.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I just want to point out that, just very quickly, the top 5 of them, at least 4, if not 5, all depend on data in some way. So it's not really just about analytics. It's about how L&D is handling data. And this is a big change from how the survey was certainly 3 or 4 years ago, and certainly when it started. It's now about how we do our jobs in terms of being more effective, rather than about how we design and deliver content, which is very much how we've been thinking about L&D traditionally. Sally Ann.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, we've been doing the Barometer with the AFINEF in the last 2 months, and we do an annual Barometer of e-learning in France, the Barometer. And for the first time in 20 years, the respondents said that, usually they say the main reason for doing e-learning is to save money, cost-cutting, budget, For the first time, they said, it's to deliver higher performance. So for this year, for the first time in France, that's what they said. The other thing is that in 2015, 10% of companies in France used e-learning. 2020, with our barometer, we've got 30% now. There's a big penetration into the small and medium companies. If you are going to do some data analytics and you are going to start building reports about your e-learning, I want to give you one piece of advice that I learned the hard way. The main dimension that gives value is activity, work. I look at all sorts of people's systems, and what are you measuring? Oh, competence, knowledge, testing exams, quizzes. The only thing that adds value is the change in the work. That's when the value hits the road. Competence is an input. but we treat it as an output because we're in the learning business, right? But it's activity. So if you are going to start doing data, for heaven's sakes, try and track activity. Get a dictionary of activities, get some definitions of activities, but try and measure activity. That way you're building your house on rock. If you build it on knowledge, you're building it on sand. Okay? Yeah.
That's a great sound. Look, we're standing up here giving our thoughts about this. Does anybody have any thoughts from the audience? Yeah, otherwise it's just us talking. Yes, go. I'm going to...
Let's see, do you have the one? Yes,
Go on, Fiona, go on. You can tell this will be very carefully planned.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Go on.
Thank you, James Qureshi. Hi. Given what we've seen here and what I've been listening to from amongst other your colleagues saying that, video is a great approach, etc. Here, from what I'm reading, is that video has dropped down to number 15. So if my company starts to invest in video, my understanding in about a couple of years, that's no longer going to be the hot topic.
And that may not be a bad thing. I've got in my hand a top tool for learning. Nobody's going to describe a pen as being hot technology, but I depend on it every day. Now, the good thing about video being number 15 is, you know what, a lot of the problems have been ironed out. We now know pretty much how to do it. Branching video, intelligent use of hotspots and so on. Yeah, there are nuances, but now we know how to use it. So the question is, what's going to be hot, not what's going to be effective. So bear in mind, this is a self-selecting group right at the beginning of the curve. It's now being tried and tested. Early majority use it. I think video can be a great investment. So that's my take on that. Okay? I've lived in this field long enough not to get too excited about the stuff that's new. I prefer the stuff that works.
I was just going to say that the survey that we do, it's about
There is more than one survey.
Yeah, it's about what are you likely to be using, and video is actually in the top 5 in that.
And what about mobile as well?
Yeah, mobile is as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask Don a question? Actually, Fiona, maybe either of you. I'm curious. Are there things that come to mind that were hot, I don't know, 5 years ago that just are nowhere?
So if you think about those two groups, the social media group and the email group, my thesis, but I can't yet prove I don't have enough years of data. My thesis is that the social media group starts off ideas, and then later the email group, which are people in work trying to make things happen, pick it up. Not everything transitions from being people feeling excited about it with one group to really using it in the email group. Classic example is gamification. Now, gamification works in the right circumstances, in the right way. It hasn't transformed. It hasn't made its way from people being enthusiastic about it to its large-scale implementation. The same is true for a bunch of other stuff. Fiona, any thoughts?
Trying to think what not in the top 5 or hasn't been in for a while. Yeah, MOOCs maybe. Yeah,
MOOCs is a classic example. It plummeted down the table in terms of people saying it was hot, and just at the same time as the number of courses absolutely ramped up. So people were really using it in the real world, but L&D didn't think it was very exciting. Dave?
Two quick thoughts to your question. One is, most of you are probably familiar with the hype curve that exists around something. When things get really hot, they go really, really hot, and then it goes into this trough of disillusionment when reality sets in, and then it gets to a level of normalization. So I would not interpret something falling off this list as it's no longer relevant. I would interpret it more as it's reaching a point of normalization, that it's now part of the larger equation rather than being something that needs to be looked at as an outlier. The other thing that I think is especially, this becomes very prevalent to me when I look at the top of this list, we are very focused on buzzwords in our industry. What's the hottest buzzword? What's the thing we're looking at? I hate buzzwords just because of the way I define them. I define a buzzword as a term whose usage is spreading faster than its understanding. And a lot of those definitely fall in that category, that these are really big and they're really important, even though we don't exactly know what they are as a field as of yet. So I wouldn't look at the top of this list as, oh, wow, we need to be in that space. They're very buzzy right now. So the context around how you look at this list, I think, is critical.
Yeah, Dave's absolutely right. I mean, that's what this is for. It's to judge people's sentiment, not to have a crystal ball to view the future. So you're absolutely right. I do believe that learning analytics will be important in the future. I think the trend here is that we're moving towards a data-driven future, but I don't necessarily think that's going to be how we do it. I think that's a reflection of it. I would also say this about the hype curve. The hype curve goes up, comes down, and then goes up and stabilizes. I don't think everything makes it up. Some things go up and they just come down and that's it. And they never make it anywhere. And we see Second Life as a great example in learning. You know, it exploded 2009, it came down, and it never took up again. And that happens with other things as well.
Just thinking about mobile as well as another one. So we found that mobile seemed as though it was like table stakes. You had to have mobile on your requirements list, but then it wasn't necessarily being used so much actually in the in the organisation. I think that's beginning to change, and particularly in retail, for example, that is where people that are deskless are using mobile, and so on our grid there are a number of the specialists that focus on mobile, and you've got a really good company here, that is French based, that is at the forefront, certainly within Europe, in terms of mobile. So that is, it's I think another one that is coming up.
Well, although mobile is 12th on the list here, the social media group are not interested in mobile because it's something that's just, we do it. Why would you bother about it? The email group is really interested in mobile because it's a practical thing they're wrestling with and trying to make work in the workplace. So you're right, it's definitely on the up in terms of being adopted properly, yeah. Right, so go on.
We're seeing investment in virtual classrooms go back up. And my take on it when I saw the data was like, bit old hat. But it clearly, just because it's been around for a long time.
I had an argument with Donald Clark 6 years ago. He said, Don, what's going to be the biggest thing in technology? I said, it's going to be virtual classrooms. He was so disappointed. He said, well, that's just boring technology. I said, no, virtual classroom enables all organizations to make the first step into doing digital learning, because you take an experience and provide an online analogy to it. You get together online, and then you can expand and use that in different ways. And I talk to people all the time who are making that journey, and they find it really difficult. It's not trite at all, but it's the first step, I think, for a lot of organizations getting there.
I think the other thing about virtual classrooms is years ago it was kind of new and it's a little bit immediate, and if you weren't quite sure about technology, then it was difficult to make a mistake kind of live. But these days we're using FaceTime, everything is now, it's much easier, if you like, to kind of say, oh yeah, I could do Zoom or using a virtual classroom. So I think we're getting a little bit more confident, so we can start to use it, but it's going to be key so that you can with the carbon footprint and that kind of thing, deliver face-to-face coaching, mentoring, as well as classroom. Virtual classrooms are going to be key, I think, yeah.
Well, and I think part of it is also that the tools have matured. I mean, to your point, like you go back 5-10 years ago, when you were doing a virtual classroom environment, one of the first things you sent out was some sort of instructions on how to join the virtual classroom. When was the and for those of you that use Zoom, when was the last time you sent out instructions on how to use the Zoom? There's a link, you click on it, you're in. And there's a maturity in the tools that has reduced the bar. It's similar to think about how if you shop on Amazon. Nobody thinks about how to shop on Amazon. It's just user intuitive. The same thing is happening with a lot of these virtual tools that has lowered the bar in terms of their usage.
And also because people are experiencing similar things in the rest of their life, right? It's not just part of work anymore. It's, this is what you do everywhere in life, mobile as well, right? Mobile people are on their, my father stayed away from his mobile phone for a long time till he had grandkids, and all of a sudden he became an expert. But everybody uses their mobile phone and for everything, and that's kind of how it works.
And the way consumer attention drives things is really important. Now, I just want to ask one question to everybody on the panel. Sorry, Sally Ann, I know you're supposed to be moderating this, but I seem to have stepped into that role. Is that all right? Okay, I'm going to ask you about this as well in a second. Number 7 on this list, which is new this year, is coaching and mentoring. Now, I had a secret, sneaky reason for putting that on, but before I reveal my sneaky reason, that's quite popular, coming at number 7. What do you think is going on there? Any thoughts? Yeah.
Something I was involved in the initial research. The effort in learning model. The effort in learning model says that 10% of the effort to get to the the high competence, is the part I know. Then it's like 20% is a part I can do. And then there's massive 70%, we call this 10, 20, 70, is I adapt and apply. I've been banging on about that for about 20 years, but it became really fashionable in France about 3 years ago. And when people say, well, what do I do in the adapt and apply? People say, oh, well, you've got to do coaching and mentoring. And people are grabbing this idea that the effort in learning, the biggest part of the effort in learning is when the person's done the course, got the knowledge, got the skills, and has to make it work in the real world. And that's where the payoff is, and I think that's why.
Yeah. Don, was this specifically a learning technology question? It was a general learning question.
No, it's coaching and mentoring.
No. I mean, the way the question was phrased, were people specifically answering, are we using technology at all in coaching and mentoring, or simply what's hot in learning, period?
He just stuck it in there. He just put it in.
What's hot in learning, period, not technology specifically.
Yeah.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, so I think it's the 10, 20, 70 effect.
Yeah. No, and then coaching mentoring seems hot in general. Like the number of people who I've run across who are any kind of coaches, life coaches, work coaches, as a profession has seemingly exploded in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's been everyone's experience.
I would add that I think part of this is a technological component, because there are a lot of new platforms that are available that enable it in ways we've never been able to do before. I mean, I work for the eLearning Guild. We have a Facebook community that people can connect on, and as an administrator, I logged into it one day, and suddenly there was a pop-up that says, looks like your group would be good for mentorship. Would you like to learn more? And it's just something that's built into Facebook now, the ability to connect people so that you can get a mentor right through Facebook. It's much easier. There are new technologies that are much easier to use that enable coaching across distances and mentoring across distances that have never been available to us before.
There's also, it'd be interesting to see how some of the platforms, there's at least one that's here today that's talking about virtual coach and how they're going to be using the sort of the chatbot style to actually be a coach, so that they can guide you through whether it's career development or whether it's helping just answer questions, where is or whatever. But it's that coach. It's different, but it's kind of at the early stages, and there are some that are exploring that area.
And I saw one. We talk about mobile phones. Everyone's got a mobile phone, right? I saw one called Mobile Practice, where they've put an app on mobile phones. So you've been doing behavioural sales training, and you have to practice your new pitch and overcoming obstacles or whatever. You get a friend to film you. You send the film of you practicing this new behaviour to your coach. You get feedback from the group. Cheap as chips, really powerful. Mobile phone and
that's the link, right? So we talked about the consumer experience, and I said, why is coaching and mentoring on there? And it's precisely because there's been an explosion in apps around coaching and mentoring. You're absolutely right, Dave, and on platforms as well. So there's two things. You can do it at individual level, you can do it at a group level. But if you imagine the power, not just of doing this at an individual level, but of casting that across an entire cohort. Oh, I've got 500 people I need to get better at doing retail. I'm going to look at the patterns of behavior in their deployment, in how they're doing it day to day. Maybe all you're doing is sending them a text message every day to prompt them to do something. There's a really wide range of these apps out there now, and I first became aware of this in 2018. Later on this year, I'll come out with a bit more substantial piece of work on this. But if you want to keep your eye on one thing, everyone's going to be shouting about analytics and data, but the coaching and mentoring piece is going to be pretty strong underneath it. And when you align that with people looking at the data underneath it, then you've really got something. You're looking at people getting an aggregate view of performance and drilling down to individuals. So as a group, we're going in this way. Why is this person different in either better or worse or whatever? So there's going to be a lot more coming down there. There we go. Right, we are at 6 o'clock, Sally Ann.
Any contributions before we wrap for today? I wanted to congratulate you all for coming to a conference in English in the middle of Paris.
Absolutely.
You're special people. You've all just won 10 points, 10 extra points, okay, for doing that. And learning credits. Thank you so much. We love you all.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.